Good morning, everyone. My name is Leon Stein from Preferred Solutions. Thank you so much for joining the session. We want to welcome, firstly, prospective or new clients for the Neurasoft Fusion Procurement System, but then also our current clients who is joining to see the new functionality and features of Neurasoft Fusion Procurement. The reason for having the session today is to give you an in-depth live demo of a Neurasoft Fusion Procurement System. And then the second part of it will be to show our current clients the new functionality and features. Your presenter will be Carrie Lee Dempsey. Carrie is a business consultant at our Preferred Solutions Western Cape branch. She has been doing implementations for Neurasoft Fusion Procurement for quite a few years. So she's an expert on the topic and she will be in best hands for this demo session. What to expect from the program? The welcoming as it's happening now. Then the first session is going to be an in-depth dive of Neurasoft Fusion Procurement in a live demo session. During the session or separate after, Carrie will also highlight the new additions and functionality for Neurasoft Fusion for our current users. There has been quite a few additions in recent times, which she will show you, and then we will follow with a Q&A session. You will see on your menu bar, either on the top or at the bottom, if you are joining via the web Teams program, that there's a Q&A button which you can click to submit your questions during the session itself. We will then answer this during the Q&A session. So if we don't answer immediately, please be patient until the end. If we received in detail or very client-specific questions, we will answer that after the session, either via an email or direct phone call. I am going to give over to Carrie, who's going to start the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today. I appreciate the time that you guys are taking out of your busy schedules to join us. I hope everyone can see my screen. Today, I'm going to be showing you from the beginning how procurement works, Fusion Procurement, as well as later on just the additional modules and some extra features I might also touch on whilst I'm giving you that the run through of Fusion. So just a little bit of background. Fusion is a web-based procurement platform, which means that you can log onto it from your internet browser, whether it be Chrome, Firefox, Opera, any of those internet browsing solutions. And it is also hosted on your server. So there is a Neurasoft database that holds all of the data from Fusion on your server. But what Fusion does is it reads your information from the Sage Evolution database that you guys are working in. So it reads all of the master data, your customers, the suppliers, GLs, inventory, everything like that. Excuse me, I'm a little bit nervous this morning. So the screen that you're seeing at the moment is the browsing logon page, which I'm going to log into shortly. And I'm going to log in with a person that's going to be creating a request. So this would be your user that logs in and creates the request and sends it for approval. The workflows for the approval are completely customizable. So you can do as many workflows as you want. You can categorize them by department. You can also categorize them by the types of purchases that you do. So just to touch on one that I'm going to be showing you today, you'll see that I've got a workflow called purchase request. I've split it into finance, IT, and operations. So within those departments, I have specific workflows set up where you can see I've got an approval. I've got a second approval when it's over 1,000 Rand. It needs to go to a second person for approval, and then it will go to the last person for approval. And these are 100% customizable exactly to fit your business and your business processes. You'll see that on the second approval, it looks a little bit different. I've got a different approval process here with different approval limits. These are based on what you want to do with your procurement, and the purchase order will only appear in Evolution once it is fully approved. So let's say you have a specific approval process, or you've got specific managers that need to approve IT that's different to finance. We'll build that in, and it will know who it needs to go to for those approval steps. And like I mentioned, we can have different authorization levels for those different types of purchases or different departments if necessary. And you'll see at the bottom, once the final approval's gone through, then it creates the purchase order in Evolution. So that's the workflow breakdown there. And every single process in Fusion will have its workflow that needs to be followed for approval. And if it isn't followed, then it won't be a purchase order and it won't be accepted. So now I'm logging in as a normal user that's going to create a request. You'll see that there's a little inbox on the left-hand side. So I've got a waiting for me. This means all of the requests that are waiting for me to do something on, whether it be an approval, whether it be I need to complete a task, I need to send more information, things like that. On my waiting by me, these are any requests in the system that are waiting for somebody to approve or are lying with someone else to complete a task. So I can easily see just by logging onto Fusion if there is currently anything that I still need to do or who is currently assigned to my request so that I can follow up if I need to. Once it's approved, it will be lying under my approved inbox. Once it's rejected, it will also be lying under my rejected inbox. And anything that has not yet been sent for approval will just be lying in my draft, whether I needed to get additional information or I don't have the documents yet to attach to it. And then under all, it gives you a breakdown of everything in the system. You'll see that I've got a lot of completed and approved. I've got rejected. I've got waiting for tasks to be completed. So I can easily come into this dashboard and go and have a look and see what is currently happening to any of the requests in the system. Okay. So I'm going to create a new request. I've got the option to choose a workflow. I'm going to choose the one that I showed you, and I'm going to choose IT. All right, so I will fill in a description over here. I'm going to use just a consulting test one for us. We've got current workflow step. This is going to be auto-assigned based on the workflow that we've chosen. So depending on how I've set it up, it's going to know what the current workflow step is, but you will always be able to go there and have a look and see what is the step currently on, and that will auto-populate. I've got tags. These are additional text fields that I can use for searching references. So if I type in there consulting, you'll see it creates like a little text field. The purchase request number will also be automatically assigned based on the next numbering system. We can have a manual numbering system as well if needed. And then I'm going to take you to the Evolution page where it's going to look up all of my suppliers. So these suppliers are the current suppliers in my Evolution company. If I add a supplier in my Evolution company, it will immediately be available in Fusion. There is no waiting time. It's immediate. So I'm just going to go and choose any one of these. So I'm going to choose Preferred Solutions. And then you'll also see that I've got a project drop down. So this is going to also look at your projects in your Evolution company. If you've got project by line, it will be on the line and not here in the header. So it looks at those settings in Evolution so that it mirrors what Evolution needs. Any force fields that you have in Evolution will also be forced in Fusion. You will need to fill that in to be able to move forward to the next step. We have a messages tab. These are the messages that appear at the bottom of your purchase order in Evolution. So if you do have messages that you put on those purchase orders, you can allocate them here as well. On the supplier information page, this is a new feature for some of our older clients. We've got a supplier credit limit showing. We've got a remaining balance, as well as the supplier payment terms will be showing there as well. So for those of you who already have Fusion, this is a new feature if you haven't been upgraded yet. We also have a delivery address. So we've got delivery address drop downs over here. So we can have your predefined delivery addresses that will automatically populate delivery addresses in there if you've got multiple branches that you deliver to. Otherwise, it's just an open space for you to be able to type in those delivery addresses as well if needed. On the assignment tab, we do have the option to tell the user that they need to assign a specific user to their next workflow step for approval. Otherwise, the system will automatically do it, and then it will tell us who it is assigned to and when it was assigned on this tab. So this is just a viewing tab. On the status, we've got a normal and urgent priority status if you needed to allocate it. And then on the request status, we've got it as draft because I haven't sent it for approval yet. So that will also automatically update for us. On the approval tab, we've got new. As soon as I send it for approval, it will wait as pending and then completed once it's been finally approved. It will also list the last approved person over there. On the totals tab, this is going to come from my lines that I add. So as soon as I've added some lines, I will show you those totals again. And then we've got information, which is our order date and our due date that you can change depending on when your order is due for. On the references tab, we've got user-defined fields and supplier invoice number that we can fill in, as well as on the custom fields, we've got any of your user-defined fields that you currently have on your purchase orders in Evolution. We can bring them in here and have the users fill it in over here. If it's forced in Evolution, we'll force it in Fusion too, so that it knows that it needs to populate. All right, so the users will fill in the supplier, projects, and then on the supplier information tab, the delivery address, and any of those customized fields. Those are the ones that the users will fill in. Once I've filled in all of my relevant headings or header information, I can then move along to my lines. I've got the general ledger lines as well as inventory lines tab. So depending on which one you're ordering, you'll flip between the two. And you can have multiple general ledger lines as well as inventory lines on the same order. So I'm just going to click on new there. The general ledger accounts that are showing here are the ones that have been allowed for purchases in Evolution. One of the things that you can also do is you can update your workflow or your user to say that you only allowed specific GL accounts to be able to process to. So you can limit the users from being able to purchase to all of your GL accounts by saying either by user or by workflow, this is what you're allowed to purchase to. So I'm going to choose consulting over there. I'm going to say solution. Let's say it's 10 hours. And it also gives me an option to put in a discount percentage. It will automatically populate with your default tax type. So there you'll see it's allocated 15%. But if your GL account or your supplier is set up to be 0 rated, it will pull that VAT type through. If I put in a discount there, I can just say 10, and it will automatically allocate my 10% discount to the top totals. On the right-hand side, you'll also see that there's budget figures. So for my period, I've got 10,000 available in budget. And for my year to date, which means from my start of the year up until this current month, it's giving me a 60,000 Rand year to date total over there. At the moment, I'm minus in my period, but I do have yearly year to date available. So this allows the approvers to be able to determine, do they have budget available? Should they go ahead and approve it, yes or no? We also have the job. So if you do have a job using the job module in Evolution, you'll be able to link a specific purchase to a job. And then you also have the line note information. So if you do have any additional information that doesn't fill in on your description field, you can change and add that in there just like you normally do on the purchase orders in Evolution. All right. So once I've filled in all of that information, I can click on OK. And that will then save my line there, and it will also give me my budget availability on my screen there. If I go to inventory lines and add a new inventory line, the same procedure will follow. You choose your item and you choose your warehouse. Just to show you on the inventory side, we have an inventory inquiry field where it tells us what's currently on hand, what's available, and what is on purchase order, what is on sales order, and what is reserved. So that's a nice feature that you can use if you are wanting to make sure that they're not purchasing stock that you already have purchased previously. or unnecessarily. Okay. So I'm going to say okay and save that. One of the things that I didn't mention is that it will use your last GRV price on your item there. If you do have a last GRV price filled in, and if you are using preferred suppliers, it will go and look at the supplier that you've picked for your purchase request and pull through their pricing on the line for the inventory side of things. There is also an import line function. So if you do want to import your lines, instead of them adding them one by one, you can also import your inventory lines, as well as on the GL side, you can import those lines for you, just to make it a lot easier, especially if you already do your planning in Excel. You've got the Excel spreadsheet. Just to show you, if you import it, you've got your file, browse, and you just mention what the sheet name is. So we do have templates available that we can send through to you to know what the order of the fields must be that you need to fill in. Okay. And then at the bottom, we've got a drag and drop option for uploading any of your files that you want to add. The idea behind uploading your files is that any relevant information for this request remains on the request itself. It will then save it onto your Fusion. When you come in as an approver, you can then click on that file. It will automatically download from the system and you'll have access to it, which means that you no longer have to have a shared folder where everybody has to have access to that folder to be able to see it. You can just go to Fusion, click on it, and then you can open it up from there. So I'm just going to go to my Files tab and add a new one there. It does allow me to do a drag and drop if I do have that already available. So just to open up this, there is my file that I'm uploading. And let's say this is a supplier invoice. I can then go to my attachment type and I can choose what kind of attachment this is. So I'm going to choose supplier invoice, say okay, and then it will be available for me there in my Files tab. I also have a comments option if I wanted to add a comment, and you can add comments anytime, even if it's approved. You can go in and add a comment if you just wanted to record all of the relevant information to this one purchase request. There we go. My comment has been saved with a timestamp, as well as the person that has posted this. Okay. So once I've filled in all of my relevant information, I've added my comments, I've added my files, you'll see that there is the Good Receipt voucher. I will be going through that in the second session, just that's an additional module that's come on board. On the workflow assignment history, I haven't yet sent this off for approval yet, so that's why there is nothing to display here. As soon as I send it off for approval, it will start recording that. And yeah, so I can just make sure that I've got all of that information filled in and then click on request approval. If everything that is meant to be filled in isn't filled in, it will prompt you need to go and fill in a project, or you need to have an attachment. So we've got multiple rules that we can also apply within our workflow step to say you need to make sure that this has been added to it before you can move on to the next step. So we've got, so if your requirement is you need to have attached a quote, then we can put in a rule to say, look for an attachment with the data type being a quotation. And if that isn't filled in, it will stop them from being able to move forward. Okay, so I'm going to click on request approval and say okay, and this is going to go and have a look at my workflow step, and it's going to go then and see who is the approver for this, where is it. So just to show you, if I go to my waiting by me, just want to go by order, there it is. There it's assigned to Dean, so I can come in at any time and have a look and see where is my request lying. So I'm going to log in as that approver. There it is in my waiting for me inbox. That means that I need to do something on it. I've got the option to do the quick approve. The quick approve allows us just to see a breakdown of it. We've got our purchase request, the description, the projects, and we've got the lines listed over here with the linked files, as well as the current workflow step that I can view. I've only got an approve and reject option. If I wanted to see the comments, I would have to go into the request itself, and then I can go and see any of the comments, as well as the delivery address information or the supplier information tab. So that's quite important, I would say, with depending on if you're going to use a quick approve yes or no, what information do you want to see? What information is relevant as an approver? We also have the option to print a request for quote at this point, just to show you what that looks like. If I have filled in the supplier, it will populate with the supplier's details at the top there. So there you'll see it's coming from this Evolution company to what is the supplier, and it gives me my lines with the quantity, no totals or anything like this. You can then send this off to the supplier. If you haven't filled in a supplier, it will just be a blank. So this 2 will be blank, and then you can send it to multiple suppliers to get those quotations. So that is also a new feature in the system. And I can email the request for quote from here, which means that I can now select my supplier. And that supplier's contact details are the ones that it will be sent to. Okay. If I wanted to as well, I could also request information at this point, which means, let's say I wanted to ask somebody else within that department for advice on approving this. I can send it to David as an example and say, please check. Request for information. This is now going to send the request to David, and David's going to receive that as a request for information. I also want to mention that every single step in the process here will send an email notification to whoever it is assigned to, so that they know they've got something waiting for them. Once it's been approved, the person that sent the request will receive an email notification. If it's rejected, they will receive an email notification. So that will happen, and it will have the details as well as a quick URL link. So you can just click on the email and it will take you to your login page. So I've done a request for information. So if I click on the request now, I do not have an approve or reject option, but I can come to my comments section and I can see that a comment has been added with the request for information. Please check if this is not a duplicate. What I can now do is I can go ahead and post a comment. If I needed to upload more information or upload a document there, I can click on edit. I won't be able to edit any of the lines over there, the workflows or anything like that. But what I will be able to do is I can attach a new file. I can obviously add as many comments as I want, things like that. Once I'm done, I can go ahead and click on resume, which will take it back into the workflow for the approval. It's assigned back to Dean, and now Dean can decide if he's going to approve or not. There is my request. I'm going to go ahead and approve this. I did have a bigger than 5,000 requests, so it is waiting for 2 people to approve it. So it's gone to Gary for approval. So if I have a look at that request and I go to the workflow assignment history over here, you'll see that it has listed those workflow steps, and that the current step is waiting for the approval by the IT manager. So once IT manager has approved it, saying okay, it will then go back to my originator for them to email that purchase order off to the supplier. I'm going to log in as that person. If I go to my requests, excuse me, there it is. If I go to the Evolution tab, it is purchase order number 238. So if I go to my Evolution company, and I go and look for 238, that number, there is my request. You'll see my external order number is number 93. If I double click on that, you'll see there is my 2 lines consulting and paper for those values that have been approved, and it will only lie in Evolution once it has been fully approved. All right. Okay. So once it has been approved, let's say it has gone off to the supplier. So Alex is now going to email the purchase order to the supplier. it will have the supplier contact details that are filled in on the supplier's master file in Evolution. If you've got multiple contact people, you can add them as people on Evolution so that you've got those options to choose from and obviously link to the supplier. Otherwise, you can also just type in the to and email address over there, depending on what you want to do. So you'll just tick that. The emails also allow you to email any attachments that you have added to the request with the purchase order to the supplier in this case. So you can tick that, and what it will do is it'll have the purchase order attached as well as this attachment. So if you've added drawings of a particular product or you've added the quote there, you can email your purchase order with their quote to the supplier from the screen. You'll see an email has been queued for delivery, but if I just wanted to print it to screen, I've got my purchase order with the lines and then the total at the bottom. Let's say I've received back information from the supplier to say, but the price has gone up, or I've accidentally placed the order with the wrong preferred solutions supplier, anything like that. You can then click on the three little dots on this request, and then you've got the amend request option. What it's going to do is it's going to mark this approved request as a draft in my inbox. It has already got all of that information saved. So this is a new feature for those old Fusion users. Once you have made changes to the request itself over here, you can see I can go to a different supplier. Let's choose Preferred Solutions Eastern Cape, and let's change the price of the paper. It's now gone up to 130 Rand. Well, let's say you needed to add a delivery line that you didn't have in the original quote. You can also do that. So now I'm going to go ahead and request approval again. I've made a change, which means the system is going to need to go through that approval process again in order for it to take effect. I'm going to go ahead and approve it. I'm not going to do the request for information again, just the two approvals. All right, so now if we go back to our Evolution and go and open up that order, it's gone through the approval process again, just like it needed to. So now if I open up this request, you'll see it actually hasn't updated the supplier. I must check that out. Sorry, I am on my testing database, so I'll just make a note of that, but it has changed my price over there to 130. Okay. And then the emailing templates, we can change any of the emails that get sent out with any information that you want to add to those emails. So if you want a wording change in the email that gets sent out, we can do that, as well as the printout can be customized to add your logos, to add any additional information, any terms and conditions that you want to add to it. If you want the approvers to print on the request, you can also do that as well. And then that is the approval process from the beginning to the end. We also have the dashboards in the system. So if I have a look at the pending requests, purchase requests, sorry, over here, I can see in the system these are the purchase request numbers with their corresponding purchase order numbers, and what is the status currently in Evolution. Is it archived? Is it unprocessed? So this is just a brief overview and a look of what is currently happening in the system from Fusion to Evolution. Right, so that is the first session done. I'm going to move along to the second session, if that's okay, Leon. I don't know if there's any questions, if anybody has sent anything through yet, and doesn't look like it.
I have not received any questions in the Q&A. If anybody has questions, we're going to allow 2 minutes. If you want to type a question now before we jump over to the next session.
Whilst people are thinking of any questions, I also want to mention that we do have a password policy that we can implement. So depending on your company's password policy, we can put that in to say it needs to be 10 digits with a symbol with a capital. And then we also have the multi-factor authentication if it needs to be authorized from your phone as well, the two-factor authentication. So it's very secure. Sydney asked, does the new functionality get added to the existing Fusion installations, or do we need to do an upgrade? We will have to run an upgrade, but it takes about 10 minutes. So it doesn't take long at all. It's just to bring the new version onto your current database.
Okay, we have another question from Tom Pearson. Does Fusion integrate with Sage Cloud Accounting?
Not yet. We are still waiting on Fusion. Well, that'll be Fusion 3. So you'll see at the top it says Fusion 2. So Fusion 3, we are busy currently developing it, but it's not ready yet. We don't have an EPA yet either.
All right, it seems that's all the questions for now. Let's move on to session number 2.
Yeah. All right, so in session number 2, I want to show you the additional modules. So we've got the goods received module. If I go to my left-hand side, you will see that we kind of mirrored the purchases inbox. We've got a waiting for me, waiting by me, and the same with the goods request, waiting for me, waiting by me, approved, rejected. So each of the additional modules, the goods received voucher, will also have an approval workflow that needs to be set up. It doesn't need to mirror your procurement side of things. It will be its own workflow completely. So if I go to the goods received request, I can click on the 3 dots, and there I've got the option to receive goods. I am going to use my latest one over here. I'm going to receive goods, and you'll see it's now linked to that supplier and that purchase order number. I'll click on my workflow, and I've got it my own specific workflow for the goods received approvals. Once again, the current workflow step will automatically populate, and there is also a description that I can fill in. So if you wanted to put an additional description in there, for instance, if you have the delivery note number, you can also do that. And then on the supplier reference, you'll put that delivery note number in there just as to tie up to any of the documentation that you upload. This will also automatically bring through your general ledger lines as well as your inventory lines. So there I've got that paper. So if I click on the inventory lines, I've got the option now to fill in the quantity that I'm receiving. So there I ordered 1. It does allow me to enter in more than what I've ordered if you do allow for an oversupply, to allow for your users to do that. If you've received more and you are accepting that, you can. And on the general ledger side, it does allow me to also do partial orders. So if I'm not receiving all of it, let's say I'm just accepting 5 of it, it will allow me just to put in a partial amount. So it will then, once the GRV approval has happened, it will post that GRV into Evolution automatically, and it will create a partially processed order if the order hasn't been fully completed. If I have oversupplied, if I've allowed more to be accepted than what was ordered, then it will go and update my purchase order in Evolution with what you did accept, which in this case is 2 when I ordered 1. I also have the option to put in comments on the goods received request, as well as my own files I can upload here. So any of your delivery notes or signed documentation, you can also upload here on your files. Assignment will be exactly like our old workflow, other workflow. It will know who it needs to go to. the status over here, we've got that request priority again. And then on the approval side, it will just list us there. Once I've filled in the values and my lines, it will automatically populate with the total of what my delivery note actually needs to tie back to, as well as on the information tab, you'll just see who created it and the date. All right, so once I'm happy with that, I can go ahead and request approval, say okay. I have that purchase order open, sorry. Let me just try that again. Sorry, guys. Just going to try this one quickly. I tested this morning. I'm so sorry. I'm just going to log off here quickly. It must have maybe been the user that I was logged in as. So I just created a new one now. So I'm going to log in as the approver that was assigned to the request, which was Peter. So I'll go to my good received inbox. There it is. So for this one, I've just accepted that quantity over there as 5 on the second line. And I'm going to go ahead and approve that. This is purchase order 235. Okay. So if I go to purchase order 235, I now have a partially processed GRV and an unprocessed supply invoice that I can accept the supply invoice on over there. So that's how the GRV works. It goes through the approval process and it will post the GRV and it will do everything that your GRV or receiving of goods in Evolution does, as well as allowing you to add all of the files and comments to your request and go through an approval process. All right. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the interbranch. I see that there is also a question about, can it be used as standalone or do we need Evolution? It does need Evolution because it reads the supplier and the GL information from Evolution to be able to populate into Fusion. So I'm not sure how it would work as a standalone, but maybe if it is something that you would like to explore, we can have a look and see if we can just have Fusions on its own. It depends on the information that you want to fill in there. So we can definitely talk about that. So the next module is the interbranch transfers. The interbranch transfers works exactly like Evolutions, where I have a request. So I'm going to click on new and I will say I need to request stock from which warehouse to another warehouse. This allows you to build in that approvals first so that it can be approved prior to people just issuing stock and sending stock on interbranch transfers. So if I click on the workflow request and click on interbranch, it will have its own workflow with the approvals, just like previously. Our description will say shipment due. I've got 2 references here that I can use as additional information fields. And then I've got my warehouse to from and to over here. If I wanted to allocate a project, it would allow me to there as well. I've got a status that will give me the current workflow step, what the status is and who it's assigned to. On the information tab, I've got a due date, so I can change that to be the date that I need it to be transferred on, as well as the interbranch transfer number will now be populated. And then also on the transit warehouses, this will automatically fill in for you. It will just allocate the default in transit warehouses for if you receive damaged goods on various goods. Once I've filled in all of that information, I can go to the request lines option. I can click on new, and then I will be able to choose my stock item that I need. So let's say I want to order 10. I've got a unit of measure, so it will allow you to put in a unit of measure if it is a unit of measure item. I've got a description for the line, as well as a reference. Here is my inventory inquiry button again, so I can immediately see, do I have enough on hand for this warehouse transfer to happen? On the right-hand side, we've got the pending status approval. Then it will go to shipping, and then it will go to receiving as we go through the process. So I'm just going to say OK, and that will then save my line. And then once I've filled that in, I've got comments and files. So each of the modules will have their own comments and files option for you to add any information that you need to. Once I've done that, I can then click on request approval, and it will assign it to somebody for approval. So it's assigned to Dean for approval. And it will be under the interbranch transfer waiting for me. I can now go ahead and approve it, but what I will need to do is I will need to approve on the line itself. So I can click on edit. I will be able to go to the line and then change that to approved and put in the quantity that I'm approving. Okay, so it's automatically done that, but you will see that there is an approve all lines option. So if you don't want to go to each line and reject it, you can, or approve it, you can also click on approve all lines, and it will automatically fill in with the requested amount in the approved amount. And then you don't need to go one by one to each line, edit it and fill that in. So if you are approving all lines, that's nice and easy. And now you can go ahead and approve it. Once it's approved, and only once it's approved, will it then be allowed to be shipped and issued. So Gary has now received this request. So if Gary logs in to his interbranch transfers, there is the request. It has been approved. So now what he's going to do is he has the option now to ship it. So if he edits this line, you'll see the quantity to ship is now available. And I can say, okay, it will not allow me to ship more than what I have approved. If I click on the little 3 dots, you'll see it says to shipped. To ship is 10, shipped is 0 for now, and then outstanding is still 10 that needs to be done. So once I've done that, I can go ahead and approve that. It is now lying with a different user for approval. So yeah, it does follow the same steps that Evolution would, except that you've got your approval process there. Okay, so it has not yet been shipped. So now what I'll do is I will ship this. Okay, it has now created an interbranch transfer shipment. So if I go to my shipments, you'll see there it is in transit. Where it is currently assigned to Peter. So if you go to my incomplete shipments. There it is. And I can now receive it. It does also allow me to print out a delivery note at this point for me to print out and send with the stock that has left the system. So I'm going to go ahead and edit that. Here I can now say, what am I receiving? Because this is now in transit, so the next step is going to be receiving. So let's say I received 8. I received 1 that is damaged and 1 variance. Okay. Once I've filled that information in, I can receive my stock. And it is now processed. So I've got unprocessed transactions. So if I have a look at the log file here for my unprocessed transactions, there I've got IBT number 10 for first one and second one. If I click on that, it will allow me to see, has it been posted? There we go, posted. So I can immediately come in here and go and have a look and see what is the status of this. And if there are any errors for that, it will give me an error pop-up. So let's quickly have a look at the paper. Just going to filter on today's date. So there you'll see I've got the warehouse transfers, the IBTs, ins and outs of those transactions. So it's immediately in the system. As soon as it's shipped, it goes into the in-transit, to the goods in transit warehouse. As soon as you've received it, it goes out of the goods in transit and into your applicable warehouses. In this case, I added some to damaged and I added some to the variance goods. So all of that information will be available there. So there I've got some items in the other warehouses. Okay. So that is how the IBTs work.
There is a question regarding IBTs.
Yes.
Chumani asked, can you ship less than what was approved?
Yes, so it will become a partially processed IBT and it will be waiting for you there, as that's why it creates the T-2. So you will then just have multiple transactions for that same IBT number until it is fully approved or cancelled. You can also cancel it at the end if you're not going to accept the rest.
Thank you.
Right. Any other questions? Let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to move on. Yes.
We have one question. I'm not sure if it is regarding interbranch transfers. Can a Fusion password integrate with the Active Directory like LDAP?
No, it doesn't. Not at this time. We have had another request, so it might be in the future. But Sydney, you can just send me that information and then we can chat about it.
Fantastic. That's all questions.
And that's one of the things that I just want to mention is that if there is anything that we need to add or change that'll better everybody, then that's what we do. We take everything that you send to us, we put it into the system if we can, and especially if it will benefit other users. Yes, certainly. So when you have multiple lines on an IBT, you can approve and reject some of them. The approve all lines will mark everything as approved, but let's say you wanted to use that as a shortcut, then you can just go to the other lines and reject those specific lines. But at this point, you will only be able to either reject a line or approve a line. So you would either, let's say 10 was ordered, you would only approve 5, unless you want to reject that whole line and reject the entire 10 that was requested. So I hope that answers your question. And that's the same sort of idea behind when you ship it. You don't have to ship all of the approved lines. You can leave those there and just ship what is applicable and then come back to it and ship the rest. It will hold it in. So if I go to my interbranch transfers, the request lines, the total outstanding at the moment is 0, which means I have received all of my stock or shipped all of that stock off. if I hadn't, there would be an outstanding balance there. And until it goes back to 0, this will be available for you to IBT against. So I am going to move on to the supplier account approvals. So what the supplier account approvals does is it allows you to request a new supplier record to be added into Evolution without having to go into Evolution and add it there. So I once again have an approval process. I can then click enter in the supplier account name. But let's say 7. This is the main name on the Evolution name field, but we've got the second description. So if you have a different trading as name that you normally fill in there, you can. The request number will automatically be populated. On the supplier information tab, we've got a contact person that you can fill in there. So let's say it's Leon. Ooh. Email address. The postal address. Sorry, I'm just putting in generic fields here. And then the account code will automatically be populated based on the next automatic number that's from Evolution. Otherwise, we do have the option to set that as manual numbering if you wanted to. We've got the credit limit that you can put in there. And then if it is a foreign supplier, you can also allocate the supplier's currency code there. The user-defined fields are any of the user-defined fields that are in the system. So this has dates, account registration dates over here, but obviously we have banking details that we can add in here. I didn't go to too much information. We've got banking details that we can add. We've got any of your VAT number, registration number, all of those fields can be added in here so that all of the relevant information that you need your supplier to have in Evolution will be populated here, and you can specify those. So anything that you won't need to use, you don't need to add it in. But we can add as many of those fields as we wanted to. We've also got the comments, and we've also got the files option. So if you've got a credit application form that you sent to the supplier that has been approved, you can also go and add that in there so that you've got all of that information in one place. And this will follow an approval process again. So whatever you've allocated on the approval, it will go to that. Obviously, bear in mind, this is not going to have an authorization limit on it. So we will just go ahead and request approval. It's assigned to Dean. Here we go. If I go to my supplier account, once I approve this, it will then go in line in the system. So it is now, if I go to all, there it is. And if I go to Evolution, so this eliminates the need for people to go into the system and go and update suppliers. So you can then take away people's editing rights to adding an editing supplier. So whatever the information is that you put into the system is secure and it's been approved. Okay. One of the things that I also just want to mention is that your Evolution users and your Fusion users are 100% separate from each other. So you don't have to have the same people that use Evolution using Fusion. It can be a completely separate list of users, which means that you can eliminate the people that need access to the accounting system, and you can be a little bit more secure on that side. And that is the supplier account approvals. And that's the new modules in the system. as well as those other features that I mentioned at the beginning in the first session, just those additional viewings, things that you can see on the screen, as well as the request for quote and the amendment options over there. Okay, so we can move on to the Q&A session if there are any more questions.
Yes, before we stop Carrie's screen share, maybe she needs to display something for questions. If you have any questions, please just submit it in the Q&A section.